Oprah Winfrey is arguably the most trusted woman in media history, a towering figure whose endorsement could shift entire markets and define cultural moments. For decades, if she recommended a book, it became a global bestseller overnight. If she mentioned a product, it sold out within hours. But what happens when that unparalleled, nearly unassailable level of global trust is placed in the wrong hands? What happens when the queen of daytime TV uses her massive platform to endorse a man who turns out to be one of the most prolific predators of the 21st century? To truly unpack the deeply disturbing connection between this vast media empire and the Brazilian cult leader and medium known as John of God, we have to look past the high-gloss television segments. We have to examine an entire system of validated pseudoscience, desperate seekers, and the massive industry that grew in the shade of that singular powerful endorsement. We have to go back to 2010. But before we get to the initial magazine feature, we need to understand the historical context that created this figure. João Teixeira de Furtado was not operating in a vacuum. His practice was a uniquely Brazilian synthesis that blended conventional Catholicism, local animist traditions, and the European imports of Spiritism. This belief system contended that all living beings are inhabited by immortal spirits that move from body to body, and that uniquely gifted individuals, known as mediums, can channel them. This wasn't just a theological footnote. In Brazil, Spiritism evolved into a powerful movement, particularly popular for psychic surgery. Mediumistic healers claimed their bodies acted as mere conduits for dead medical doctors or saints. When John of God began his practice in the small town of Abadiânia in 1978, he was leaning into a thoroughly entrenched cultural narrative. He claimed to incorporate dozens of unique entities. By the mid-2000s, he had already built a formidable local operation. Oprah didn't invent him, but she was about to globalize him. An ocean away, the Oprah magazine came knocking. In November 2010, a writer named Susan Casey visited the compound in Brazil. Crucially, Casey was not there as an objective investigative journalist. She was drowning in profound grief following the sudden death of her father. She arrived looking for a sanctuary, a miracle that Western grief counseling wasn't providing. She wrote a glowing, highly uncritical feature that told millions of readers they shouldn't just be open-minded, they should actively suspend their disbelief. Her writing managed to frame questioning John of God's miraculous claims as a failure of character. Instead of examining the standard parlor trickery behind his visible surgeries, she compared the entities he channeled to other powerful invisible forces like sound waves and microwaves. It was a complete abdication of skepticism. This article was a bombshell of uncritical praise. It didn't just introduce John of God, it authenticated his reality. The PR machine that would fuel an international movement had officially been turned on, but the magazine was just the beginning. Following the magazine article, the media pipeline accelerated dramatically. John of God was given a special primetime episode of The Oprah Show titled "Do You Believe in Miracles?" The producers knew that to sell this completely unscientific operation to a mainstream Western audience, they couldn't just rely on a grieving writer. They needed to manufacture credibility. They needed a real doctor in a white coat to tell millions of viewers that this was real. They brought on Dr. Jeffrey Rediger, a credentialed psychiatrist from Harvard Medical School who researched spontaneous healing. He was introduced as the resident skeptic who had traveled to Brazil specifically to medically vet the claims, but his testimony revealed a different reality. Dr. Rediger noted on air that John of God performed visible surgical interventions without any form of anesthesia or sterilization. Critically, he did not condemn this as dangerous malpractice. Instead, he claimed he was baffled. He announced that as a Harvard faculty member, he could not explain why these patients didn't react in agonizing pain. He even stated that while he was watching, a small unexplained incision manifested on his own skin over his heart. It is worth noting that years later, as the criminal reality of the compound was exposed, Dr. Rediger publicly distanced himself from the medium, reflecting on the experience and warning against the dangers of uncritical endorsement. But in 2010, this was not a critical assessment. By bringing this specific type of credentialed medical professional onto a trusted national show, the media sent a devastatingly clear signal to its audience. They did not broadcast skepticism, they broadcast awe. The television segment was the ultimate whitewash. In the court of public opinion, John of God was now vetted by Harvard. The true turning point, however, occurred in 2012. After years of coverage on her networks, Oprah Winfrey herself traveled to Abadiânia to meet John of God in person. In the broadcast that followed, she publicly described the encounter as blissful. She described feeling a powerful energy surge and left spiritually fulfilled. This ultimate personal seal of approval opened the floodgates. It triggered a massive surge of desperation tourism. Thousands upon thousands of vulnerable, desperately ill people drained their bank accounts, used their inheritance money, and spent their life savings to travel to the Brazilian outback. We are talking about people with advanced cancers, terminal diseases, severe trauma, and crippling grief. A steady avalanche of seekers made the call. When they arrived, they walked directly into a massive commercial operation. John required all visitors to wear white to help read their aura, which opened a thriving local market for white clothing, of which he received a cut. His hospital didn't charge patients a dime to be seen. but every single visitor was required to consult with the entities, who exclusively prescribed specific herbal capsules sold only at John's own pharmacy. Investigators later determined these prescriptions were nothing but passion flower. Yet, by transferring the entity's intentionality to the capsules at the purchase point, this pharmacy grew into a reported $10 million a year business. The economy included blessed water that people treated like nitroglycerin, special crystal beds that cost $60 an hour, and a gift shop selling branded merchandise. The entire town was now completely dependent on desperation money. Despite the positive media coverage, objective observers had noted deeply disturbing patterns. John seemed to have a unique obsession with women's gynecological problems, and his treatments often involved inappropriate touching. Vague allegations of sexual misconduct had been trickling in for years. As early as 2014, investigative journalists from 60 Minutes and the Sydney Morning Herald attempted to bring a critical eye to the operation. But these isolated reports were drowned out by the noise of the media machine, which continued to validate him as a mass healer. In late 2018, the blissful facade was finally shattered. Sparked by the incredible bravery of Sabrina Bittencourt, a Brazilian activist who went public with allegations from dozens of women, the cascade began. Eventually, more than 600 women accused John of God of severe sexual abuse, rape, and coercion. The reports revealed a horrific pattern. He frequently used the guise of spiritual cleansing and private sessions to invite vulnerable women into isolated rooms where he would assault them, leading them to believe this physical violation was part of a necessary healing procedure. The most devastating allegation came when John's own daughter publicly called her father a monster, claiming he systematically abused her for years. The backlash from the followers was severe. Sabrina Bittencourt was deluged in death threats. The ocean of hate contributed to her taking her own life days after releasing a final, unproven video detailing a bizarre human trafficking empire allegedly run by the group. In December 2019, John of God was sentenced to over 19 years in prison for the rapes of 4 women, with many more cases pending. At his advanced age, he is likely to die in prison. There is absolutely no evidence that Oprah Winfrey or her producers knew John of God was a predator. But that is exactly what makes this story so critical. By prioritizing sensational feel-good miracle stories over basic journalistic and medical due diligence, the media industry inadvertently laundered the reputation of a monster. When massive platforms suspend critical thinking for a great television segment, the consequences can be devastating. They validated an environment where victims were funneled directly into a trap by the very institutions that promised them sanctuary. The John of God scandal serves as a sobering reminder that massive cultural endorsement is never a safe substitute for medical and ethical scrutiny. This story is a tragic reminder to always question the miracles being sold to us on screen. But what are your thoughts on how the media handles these types of spiritual gurus today? Have things changed, or is the wellness grift just taking a new form? Let me know in the comments below. If you value this kind of objective, deep dive journalism, please hit that subscribe button and like the video. It really helps the channel grow.